Questions from the panel and from the audience, if that's applicable. And the candidates will be allowed to have a 30-second closing statement. We will now start with the introduction of the candidates. We'll allow them to introduce themselves. We'll start with Ms. Boston.
Good evening. For the last 17 years, it has been my privilege to serve in all three facets of our legal community. I have been a criminal defense attorney, I have been a judge here in DeKalb County, and for the last 5 years, it has been my honor and privilege to serve this great county as Solicitor General. I am running to be your next DA because DeKalb deserves a district attorney operating at the highest level of integrity.
Thank you very much. Mr. James.
Good evening. My name is Robert James. I am the district attorney in DeKalb County. It's good to see you all this evening. My wife is here, Korea James. I've got her and I have 4 children. She's a domestic violence advocate and a psychotherapist. And I love DeKalb County. I love its citizens. And I love working for the county. And I've done everything I could the last 14 years of my life to protect its citizens, and if you re-elect me, I will continue to do the same. So God bless you, and thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you very much. Let me have the first question here. What's wrong with y'all? Why would you want to do this? I mean, it's tough. The media is always on you. The public is always on you. It's not an easy job, and I just got to ask you, explain to folks, why would you subject yourself to this? Start with you, Mr. James.
I love people, and I believe that the most expedient way to effectuate change in any society is through governmental institutions, meaning that I can directly affect someone's life, whether they're the survivor of a murder victim, or a rape victim, or a child molestation victim, or a victim of human trafficking, or a 17-year-old young man, African-American young man from South DeKalb who did not graduate from high school and is headed to prison, but for one of the many programs that we have that will keep him from going to prison. I love helping people, and that's why I'm here and not doing something else. It's not for the money, it's not for the pay. It's definitely not for the fame, because people like you are always on my back. But I love people, and God's given me an opportunity to serve, and I'll serve as long as He keeps me here.
Thank you very much, Ms. Boston.
As a mother of 2 daughters, everything that I do is for them every day, and to prove to them that they can do anything that they want to do in life. And not only for my 2 daughters, but for every child in our county. I think it's so important to step up and stand out and do the right thing. And having the opportunity to be a voice for victims, be a collaborative partner in the community, speak for people that can't speak for themselves, and save lives every day by derailing a person out of the criminal justice system and back on the right path is something that I would do over and over and over again every day, regardless of the hardships that it takes to be in an office like this and to lead a life in front of the public eye.
Thank you. Question from Jennifer.
Sherry, you just said being DA is operating at the highest level of integrity. What does that look like in the district attorney's office? And Robert, do you have it?
What that looks like for the district attorney is this. Your DA operates and must operate at the highest level of integrity. They are the highest prosecution office for this county. And everybody takes the lead because your DA should set the tone. And right now here in DeKalb, we have a community that has lost trust in many of its leaders. And so we have to have a DA that is not only complying with the law, but fairly applying the law. And right now, this community has lost faith that we don't have that. For the last 5 years, I have been a public servant, and I have operated at the highest level of integrity. No questions asked.
Thank you, Mr. James.
Well, I think the question was, do I have it? Yes.
You are the treasurer, and
Yes.
what does that look like to you?
Well, it looks like doing what we've done the last 5 years, and that's creating the state's first human trafficking task force and creating the county's first human trafficking unit, and that's creating the county's first elder abuse task force, that's expanding our public integrity unit by 4 times. That's going to trial sometimes in seemingly insurmountable odds once every year, and having a perfect trial record as DA. So the answer is yes. I believe I've done a good job. I believe the men and women that work with me have done a good job. And if anybody has any specific questions that they want to ask me, I'll answer them.
Thank you. We'll take a specific question from Mark. Yes, specifically. You mentioned we need a DA that fairly is applying the law. Do you think the law has not been fairly applied in some cases? Has the DA's office gone too far or not far enough in some cases? And certainly want to hear from the DA as well on his view on how he has applied the law fairly and what that means.
I think a lot of what we talk about fairly applying the law comes down to the perception of the community. Because if your community doesn't believe that your office is operating at the highest level of integrity, it doesn't matter if you think you are. And right now in DeKalb County, there's a great concern that we have a district attorney who breaks the law. Because we have a district attorney who's admitted to violating the law. And when that happens, that drives the entire system down. And it makes people question, well, what if it were me in that system? Is that system fair? And do we have a district attorney that is going to prosecute others where he has failed himself? And that is the issue, and that is a growing concern for our county, as it should be.
Mr. James, your response to that question?
Well, you know, the good thing about debates is that, you don't have to engage in political hyperbole. If you want to ask a question, I'll answer it. And what Ms. Boston's referring to are allegations, which were true, that I didn't file my election paperwork on time. That's essentially it. I didn't raise money for 4 years while I was prosecuting public integrity cases. And even if you don't raise money, the state says you're supposed to go on and press a button that says 0 every year. I didn't do it. And like hundreds of other public officials around Georgia, including judges and even one governor that we've had, they levied an administrative fine. But for Ms. Boston to imply that somehow I've committed a crime, it's just irresponsible and inappropriate.
Thank you. Question from Greg?
Well, it's a somewhat variation on the thing. This is an audience question, and but I think it'll give you a chance to kind of broaden your focus a bit. In recent years, DeKalb County has had a crisis in leadership. What, if any, role does the district attorney play in restoring the public's trust?
Let's start with Mr. James.
The DA's role is to seek justice. All right, it's not a political office, and so I don't go over to the Maloof building in the commission and respond to media reports about misdeeds. My job, and you guys are journalists, and so I'm just being fair, and I know y'all write a lot of things. My job is to sit down with someone, review the evidence, and make a decision that's based on the evidence. I've heard several media reports about several of our public officials, and I've investigated those. Now, I don't call a press conference every time I investigate someone, but if we find that the evidence isn't there to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, we don't seek an indictment, irrespective of the opinion of a journalist. And I'm a lawyer, and I seek justice in the courtroom. That's what I do.
Absolutely, there's a crisis in leadership right now, and I don't think we can ignore that problem that's existing right here in DeKalb. If we do, it would be an absolute travesty for us to do so. In order to change that, it's one of the reasons I decided to run for district attorney. I could have remained Solicitor General. As Greg said, it's a well-oiled machine in my office, and I'm very proud of my service record. But I made the very difficult decision to step up because I felt our county was crying out for ethical leadership operating at the highest level of integrity, and wanted someone that they could believe would handle every case, whether it's public corruption or public safety or any issue within the community, someone that would be a voice and listen, and someone that was willing to do so the highest level of accountability, transparency, honesty, and integrity.
Thank you. Question from Jennifer.
Robert, back to and Sherry, you alluded to it about a crisis of leadership, but how does the district attorney, what impact does the district attorney's office have on leadership? Every day you turn your TV on, there is news about the CAP officials doing things, and often you have to say, if they're doing something illegal, why aren't they charged? Have you investigated all of this, and if you do you send it out so that the community knows that whatever the elected officials are doing does not rise to the level of prosecution? And Sherry, if you were a DA, what sorts of prosecution would you have done that Robert has not done in the last year?
Well, and I'm glad you asked that last part of that question, because people need to be specific when they're making allegations of criminal conduct. You know, the best advice that I got was from a communications director that told me, don't let the AJC of the Crossroads or Uncommon Ground or Channel 2 run this office. I'm sorry, or WSB, Channel 2 run this office. We have to make decisions. We have to make decisions based on facts and evidence. People also have constitutional protections. And so if I get a tip or word that someone's violating the law, I will investigate that individual, but I'm not going to call a press conference and let the world know that someone that is perhaps innocent, that I'm investigating them. Now, in terms of sending things out, I've worked side by side with the FBI and the GBI doing several investigations, and I can tell you they've looked at a lot of the accusations that have been made on WSB and other places, and the GBI and the FBI and our office have all decided that some of it was ethical, but that it was not criminal. And so it's not just me, it's the world's greatest investigative agency that came to the same conclusion I came to, which is the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Thank you. Ms. Boston.
Yes, and I'm happy to be very specific. I am concerned that some of our leaders that have been indicted have been done so, not here locally, but by federal prosecutors. The prime example would be Commissioner Elaine Boyer. And there are other outstanding allegations that circulate on the media every day where I hear from citizens, what is going on? Who is looking into those cases? And they have the same questions that I do. What is going on and who's looking into those cases? And when the public's asking those questions, it means they don't know. And it means there has to be some sort of accountability, and there has to be some sort of information. It's not enough to say, I have a public integrity unit and we're investigating. That's simply not enough.
Robert, why didn't the prosecution of Elaine Boyer?
Can you grab the mic?
I'm so glad you asked that question, Jennifer. Ms. Boyer, 95% of her crimes were done out of the state of Georgia with her P card. Anybody that's prosecuted understands that I don't have jurisdiction anywhere outside of the geographical boundaries of DeKalb County. And so 95% of what Ms. Boyer did, I didn't have jurisdiction over. Now, what did happen in DeKalb County, we were set up to indict her. And I've never said this publicly, but I'll say it now because Elaine is about to be indicted. Is in jail right now. I got a call from the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Federal Bureau of Investigation when they got wind that I was going to indict her. And they asked me to hold off because they were going to seek an indictment. And I did so. And we have that kind of relationship that if they have more charges, they had embezzlement charges, they had P card charges all over the country, they had literally tens of thousands of dollars of theft, whereas our office had maybe a couple $100s worth of theft. We let the federal government take care of it. But to say that somehow we didn't investigate that case just because I didn't call a press conference to tell WSB or the Crossroads or Channel 2 that we didn't investigate it, it's just not accurate. And Ms. Boston is just again repeating what she hears on the news, which is not what prosecutors do. We make decisions based on facts and evidence.
Thank you.
If I could have an opportunity to respond. I think what Mr. James just brought up was the issue of P cards. And I don't dispute if he says that he got a call from the FBI. I have a reason to believe that. But we're sitting here knowing that Ms. Boyer was not the only person that had P card issues in this county. There are several more commissioners with issues with P cards in this county that have seemingly gone unprosecuted and uninvestigated. And even more troubling, we had a district attorney that had trouble with his P cards. So I think the issue is, it runs very deep, beyond one prosecution, beyond one commissioner. The responsibility starts at the top, and we need to have a district attorney that the people can trust and believe that is going to comply with the law at every level and at every stage.
Thank you. Question for Mark.
District Attorney, over the last few years you've been in office, you've prosecuted several high-profile cases, some of them public integrity cases, including CEO Burl Ellis, Superintendent Crawford Lewis, Tony Pope, Pat Reed, and also high-profile ones like Andrea Snyderman and Hemi Newman. I'd like to hear you defend your record. Part of the debate here is that you haven't done enough. Do you think you've done enough? And to the solicitor, what do you think of the district attorney's record of prosecuting these high-profile cases?
No one's done more, period. You know, I quadrupled the size of our public integrity unit. You know, we've got, 41 convictions over a 3-year period. Many of those cases had millions of pages of discovery. In a 3-year period, I prosecuted a superintendent, a chief operating officer of school, and a chief executive officer. The FBI came in and looked at all those P cards that Ms. Boston is referring to. They actually looked at evidence. She watched news reports, and they decided that there was nothing to investigate. So did the GBI. They actually looked at evidence. She watched news reports, and they walked away. And so, again, as a prosecutor, I make decisions based on facts and evidence, not based on what people say on Channel 2 or in the AJC. And to do so is irresponsible and dangerous for the district attorney.
In response to Mr. James' record of prosecution, Mr. James has tried a lot of high-profile cases in the courtroom over the last several years. And I've heard him say on numerous times that I am the only district attorney in the metro area that gets in the courtroom. Let me tell you why that's a problem. Mr. James has a large office, many of those attorneys that are amazing prosecutors. And the problem is there's only one elected DA. And we heard earlier on the first panel, what is the role? A major part of this role is being a good administrator and making sure your office is run every day, that policies are in place, that budget is staying on point, that there's training for your prosecutors, that your units are running well, that you have good management and good teams and good leadership. When you are in the courtroom trying high-profile cases that are going to be in front of the camera to put your face on WSB, you are not doing the one job that the voters elected you to do, and that is run the office and be the DA.
Thank you. I have a question. Is juries, in particular in high-profile cases, is that diverting the DA's responsibility to an unelected body and sort of giving yourself cover and sort of testing the wind to see which way that case may go?
Okay, so Tom, I think what you're referring to specifically
Not necessarily.
are the officer-involved shooting cases. Yeah, because there's only been one special purpose grand jury, and
Yes.
that was something different. So in reference to the special purpose grand jury cases, that's actually something that I learned from my predecessor, Winkeys Fleming. I worked for her; she was my mentor. DeKalb County had, I want to say, it was 20 or so police shootings in 1 year back in 2007, and she used the special purpose grand jury as an investigative body to their subpoena power to look into things and to advise her. I've used them similarly. They advise us, and I make their advice I take into consideration. But Ms. Boston talks about me being on the news. I was just on the news a couple months back, and they advised me to indict someone, and I did not take that advice. So I don't farm out my my discretion to anyone. It's the DA's job to make the final decision, and I've done so, irrespective of their advice. And so the answer is no, in short.
Thank you. Ms.
Yes.
Boston, your response?
I do believe that the special grand juries divert or give the public the opinion that somehow their input matters when it does not. To be district attorney, you are running to be in a role where you have to make very difficult decisions every day. And the only person that can make that decision at the end of the day is the district attorney. What I've heard while being out in the community is that people feel that yes, this process is some sort of cover for the district attorney in making decisions. What the public wants to hear from the DA is there enough evidence to go forward on this case, yes or no? If there is, you present that case to the criminal grand jury. If there isn't, then you don't. It's that simple. And to use the grand jury process in a way as an investigative tool, I think is confusing for the community. It muddies the water of the process, and it makes already difficult cases much more difficult.
Thank you. Jennifer, question?
Since you're on the subject of special purpose grand jury, this particular one recommended lots of prosecution, and the only one that was ever done was Burr Ellis. Is there any particular reason why no one else out of this special purpose grand jury was ever prosecuted?
Well, Jennifer, I love you, but what you said was inaccurate. That's not what they recommended. If you go and read the presentment, they only recommended prosecution of Burl Ellis. They recommended investigations of the other people, and we did that and we've done that. But the only person out of, I think it may have been 11 or 17 people that they actually recommended that we prosecute, that we indict, was CEO Burl Ellis. And so that's online. You can Google special purpose grand jury, DeKalb County, Burl Ellis, and it'll come up. But that's the only indictment recommendation. So no, I know that's been the perception in the press, and you know, I have to always say that because, you know, we're in here and we're having a debate and we keep talking about what the media said, what the media said, what the media said. When I go to work every day, I don't check what Channel 2 says before I make a decision.
Hey, there are other stations.
You know, and a lot of times things are said that are inaccurate, you know, and that's just not accurate. So, yeah.
And I guess I need to direct a portion of that question to Sherry. You've just said in great detail that you don't like special purpose grand jury, that they divert attention from what needs to be done.
Well, actually what I was saying, I was referring to civil grand juries for use. I believe Mr. James changed the question to officer-related shootings or excessive force cases. And I think now what you're talking about is the special purpose grand jury that has the right to investigate other findings of the county. That's very different, and I don't have a problem with the use of legally used special purpose grand juries because they do have the right to let the DA know if there are issues that they want the DA to look into, which is different than the civil grand jury process that I was talking about in officer involved.
So my question to you, and in fact, there's a question from the audience asking about your plans if you were elected, either of you for another term, and Sherry to be DA, about police brutality and what your stance is on Black Lives Matters. And so I'm curious. Robert has indicted someone in the Anthony Hill case, for example. If you become the next DA, would you pursue those indictments from the previous district attorney, or they would just fall out of sight?
Well, if the voters make the decision to elect me as DA on May the 24th, I would take office on January 1st of 2017. So there's a lot of time between now and then, and it would be my responsibility to review the Anthony Hill case along with every other criminal case that was still pending in that office on January 1st to determine what status it's in and what needs to happen in order to see those prosecutions move forward. It's been indicted, and so now the case is moving forward, as any other indicted case would, should I take office on January 1st.
Are you putting any special pressure on getting to trial?
Well, the case has been indicted, and we handle it like every other case. And you know, and I would say Ms. Boston's been talking about what she would do, you know, with the grand jury and what she would do with this case and what she would do with that case. But the reality is that Ms. Boston has never presented a case in front of any grand jury, special purpose or otherwise. Ms. Boston has never prosecuted a murder case. Ms. Boston has never prosecuted an armed robbery case or a child molestation case or an aggravated assault case. She simply doesn't have the experience. You have someone, you know, making promises about what they're going to do with the grand jury, but they've never actually presented a case to be indicted in front of a grand jury. That's kind of what the DA does.
Thank you. Using special grand jury.
Mr. James is accurate when he says that I have never prosecuted a felony case. But I've spent 17 years as a lawyer, and I have been a defense lawyer and defended major felonies across the state of Georgia. Prior to becoming your solicitor 5 years ago, I had never prosecuted a misdemeanor. I had been a defense lawyer defending these cases in criminal courts every day. So I am uniquely qualified and extremely experienced. And further, just today, I received the endorsements from former DAs, elected DAs in this county, J. Tom Morgan, Bob Wilson, and Sheriff Tom Brown, who in their 41 years of experience in an unprecedented move, endorsed me over Mr. James because they believe that I'm not only qualified, but I'm the best person to be the next DA of this county.
Thank you. Question for Mark.
Let's follow up on this idea about the district attorney shouldn't be in the courtroom. Having sat through several trials, these high-profile trials, I've witnessed the district attorney in action, and in the case of the Burl Ellis trial, it was my belief that that was a confrontation that perhaps should occur. The district attorney brought the case. It was a controversial case. Opinion remains divided to this day about whether he brought it. And so there was a thought that the district attorney who prosecuted and brought the case and strongly pursued it needed to handle the questioning when the CEO was on the witness stand. So do you think that shouldn't have happened, or why not?
No, I don't, because I think what we all remember is exactly what you just stated. It was a confrontation, it was a showdown in the courtroom, and it deviated from what the case should have been about. It shouldn't have been about Burl Ellis versus the DA Robert James. And so, yes, sometimes the DA brings big cases, but a DA that has good judgment knows when they need to step back and let their assistants, and the assistants involved in that case had many years of public corruption experience as well as high-profile trial experience. And it's important for you to know when to do that. Because again, while you're in court, not just trying the case for 6 weeks, but preparing that case for months and months in advance, my question is, who is minding the shop? Who is making sure that office is running? And if it's not you, then there's no one else.
Mr. James, you're saying that your job is just as an administrator. Do you make any apologies for it?
No, I sat here about 15 years ago, about 10 years ago, when my predecessor, Gwen Keys Fleming, was in a room like this, and the biggest criticism of her, by the people that are endorsing you, by the way, was that she doesn't know how to try cases, and and she doesn't have any experience. J. Tom had that criticism. Several of the people have that criticism. Now you're coming in here saying you shouldn't actually go try cases. Well, I've never lost as DA. I've tried serial rapists. I see our police department here. I tried William Woodard, who violently executed 2 of our police officers, Brian and Barker. I stared and faced the boogeyman in the face myself. And I convicted him, and I sent him where he belonged, to jail. I sent a serial rapist to jail. I've tried people that have violated public corruption issues. I tried Henry Newman. I tried Andrew Schneiderman. And I have gotten a conviction every time I set foot in the courtroom. And you know what? I'm okay with J. Tom, endorsing you. That's not that big of a deal to me. But he couldn't beat me in the courtroom because he's been on 2 of those cases.
Mark, I cut you off. You were about to ask me. You did? Wow. Let's have one more question. Do you have a question? We have a couple of minutes left. We're going to have one more question for the panel.
Well, very quickly, let's get back to this business of running the DA's department. We talked about these handful of high-profile cases, but every day there are dozens of robberies, rapes, homicides, home invasions going on in that courthouse, and that there's a pretty good-sized law firm handling those cases. How much role do you have in overseeing those cases? How much autonomy do your line prosecutors have, and how much should they have?
Let's start with Mr. James.
Sure. I believe in giving prosecutors autonomy. You hire good people, you let them do the job. You hold them accountable when they don't. I don't micromanage, and you won't talk to anyone that works in my office that will tell you that I micromanage. When I took the job, Gwen Keys Fleming told me, you run the largest law firm in DeKalb County. And that's in fact what I do. I am the managing partner. I try approximately 1 jury trial a year. And when I'm not trying jury trials, I'm running investigations, I'm working with the ATF. You know, anybody who's running a law office, all that boring stuff. And you know, that's what I do, but I believe in giving lawyers their appropriate discretion and letting them do their jobs. And you're only as good as the attorneys that you hire. And
negotiate a plea?
yes, absolutely. And you won't find a lawyer in DeKalb County or in the state of Georgia that will tell you that my lawyers don't have the discretion to negotiate a plea. They absolutely 100% do.
Thank you, Ms. Boston.
So what I think is important is, if you look at the solicitor's office, I'm proud to say that I've had an office for the last 5 years that has been wonderfully managed. We have streamlined and put into place great leaders, great managers that supervise, train, and make sure our lawyers have all the resources that they need. I hear continuously every day, Sherry, we wish the DA's office ran like the solicitor's office. Y'all's office returns phone calls, we get offers, we get information, and it's just not happening in the DA's office, and let me tell you why. We have seen increasingly a loss in administrators under Mr. James' leadership. He has gone through several chief trial assistants in the 5 years that he's been DA. There has been no leadership that has remained constant under Mr. James' leadership, and that's problematic. I hear every day the problem is we just don't know who to turn to or what to do. That's a problem. As DA, leadership starts at the top. You have to show that you can bring it, and you have to do it.
Thank you. Let's move right into closing statements. We'll start with you, Mr. James.
I love this county. I've spent the last 14 years protecting it. I'm a good protector. I've started the county's first elder abuse task force, the county's first human trafficking task force, the county's first human trafficking unit. I have a program to rescue young men when they're going down towards a life of crime. I believe in the work that a prosecutor does, and I've done so irrespective of what people may say in the media, and no one's presented any evidence otherwise with integrity. And I will continue to do so as long as I'm elected. And I do have a perfect trial record, and I don't know if there's ever been a DA in DeKalb County that's had one of those before. Thank you, Ms. Boston.
This election is about integrity and leadership. It's not about keeping score in the courtroom. It's about electing a DA that's going to do the hard work, make the tough decisions, and be a DA that you can believe in because they're operating at the highest level of accountability, transparency, and integrity. Since I've become your solicitor, I've done all of those things, and now I'm asking you to go out on May 24th and bring a new day to DeKalb by electing me as your next DeKalb County District Attorney.
Thank you. Good spirited debate. Give a round of applause.